Okay, I'm very sorry. I made it.
How? Did they shoot you out of here?
I needed 3 or 4 lifts and we had to figure out.
Oh, there are some lifts up here.
Yeah, but you need to be different.
It's being tried for power. If you're looking for a power plug,
Yeah, that's what was in the house. I hope I find Tom again. I kind of go to the group before I get
plug just there, and unplug my proprietary tube. Long enough cable. I may ask you to swap the one.
Yeah, fine.
No problem. We can share. Well, we have problems sharing, so we can share.
Well, let's say we have a special organization doing registration, we do centrally. So, but obviously,
Okay. So, sorry for waiting. This is the first, let's say, introduction or idea that we had, me and Lorenzo, from different agencies. I work for the European Environment Agency, and that was for the ECDC, what is standing for. Lorenzo, can you explain?
What is it? CDC is the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, and it's the agency based in Stockholm.
Yeah, and so we, in many conferences where we're going, we on a regular basis see other agencies which have GIS experts, and we always learn that we do similar things, we have similar needs, and therefore we think it would be nice that agencies also go together more, and a commission where we can get a connection to as experts give each other feedback of what is going on. It's also the reason why we did it together with Inspire, because everybody will somehow get involved one day with Inspire, and help us in help our life in the future. But it also will demand from us certain ways of working. And so therefore, we thought that this first attempt, let's say, of doing that. My view of this is, and I would like to hear from agencies and commission whether this is something we should do on a yearly basis. I would like to have that, because I think my own people kind of demand this, that we have more talk about what is going on. And each time we see presentations of others, we are impressed with what they're doing and seeing ideas that we could use and be part of. So it would be something that we really sit together, technical people, not just generic presentations with technical people. So, so you have a couple of presentations lined up, and I will start, and then maybe if there is time after this, I'm sorry we're late, we might open the discussion a little bit and see whether we can they can initiate that on a daily basis. So what I would like to tell is a story about interoperability in EDA, more on the tools and techniques that we are using today, and what we have learned, and we shortly changed basically one of our concepts of dealing with data. Normally we are an organization that deals with collecting data from countries. We have a system for that, which we are calling ReportNet, and we have about 300 data flows in there. 300 from different, all related more or less to the environment, but very different data sets that are being collected there for doing our analytical work afterwards. Although we have a good system to collect that data, we are still struggling after this data comes in to automate it and to make it so that it becomes a European data set, right? Because although we have already all the specifications and so on, there is still a lot of manual work needed to bring those things together. And this is one of the projects that we are looking into today with my team. Although my team was more involved in dissemination of data, we will also start looking into how we automate this kind of data flows. This is an example of this kind of data flows. An envelope is a country delivering something. So on a yearly basis, we get quite some data sets being delivered towards us. And they can come in shape files and in file databases in XML, in Inspire GML. I'm sure if Inspire is completely implemented in 10, 15 years, all our life will become easier, but still, I think it will take time before this has happened, and we will have to deal with this kind of data sets. So this is the idea of Inspire, where those things are better connected and better integrated. But at the end, we're dealing with a lot of formats. And we also get these extra bits which are not Inspire. I mean, we are dealing with social media aspects. We are dealing with software as a service coming from industry or from other areas where not necessarily it is fitting in the Inspire context. Inspire will always deal with geospatial issues, but we are dealing with tabular data or other aspects as well. And we have all those initiatives of websites that are out there. The Eurostat's data structure, for example, or the Inspire registry, who also has set up certain elements. So we need to bring those things together. And we've done that with an infrastructure today that looks like this. We have software that we try to bind together. You have to know that our team is very small. We have 5 people. For these 5 people, there are only 2 who can actually develop code, programming code. So, and then we have a number of consultants. And our problem is always, how can you make sure that what you ask your consultants to do, and it comes to you, that you don't lose that knowledge, that the next consultant can take this over. And this is one of the biggest struggles we are having. And we're scripting a lot. You can see we have about 10,000 lines of code on little tools and scripts to gather data, etc. And of course, we have some experience also with Model Builder, which we start using more and more. But what we learned is that code is hard to pass on. And there's a kind of learning curve system that we know about how quickly can you address or pass on information, knowledge to the other person. And I think if you stay under that level of being easy, so one process is the ability that you learn something, and the other is the time that it takes you, right? We need to stay in that easy area to make sure that I can easily switch over to this project. You have the difficult side where it is sometimes not even documented. Python code or Python script or .NET, you can code and describe a lot, but many developers forget to do that. And it's also hard to read such things, right? And then you have almost the impossible. You need many years of knowledge before you can grab that. We have certain scripts like that today, which needs almost a year training for a person to take it over, which is crazy, actually. So we needed more to look into graphical tools, ETL tools, and we will start searching, okay, what is existing that helps us with that. ESRI products have some of it, but not all. We had some open source tools that we looked into, but we were searching and investigated almost a year different tools, what would fit best in our infrastructure. I'm not saying that this is fitting for everybody, but in our case and with our constellation of servers, we needed something that was easily visual. Of course, ETL tools always do that, and it should be able to self-document a lot. It should be able to clean up data, handling that. It should be robust, obvious, and easy to learn, customizable, strong in GIS. So it should not be just a tabular like an Oracle. It has some spatial parts, but not sufficient. Multiple formats, open and non-open. Have a strong support on Inspire. Be server-oriented, and is of course integrated with what we're doing. We ended up. This is how I see it. That scripting is somewhere in the middle there, where visual tools are much easier to learn. And we did these tests with people. We made scripts in certain areas and ask another one to alter them and see and calculate how long did it take for them to learn this. And there's a huge difference. So we moved to FRE today for doing that. What surprised me is that in the commission or in agencies, nobody uses ETL tools so often. I don't know whether I asked the questions wrong, but I would like to know if others going in that direction as well. I thought it was only meant for converting one format to the other, but these tools seem to be able to do way more than I was aware of. So we have moved into using that now more and more. And I have a couple of examples on that. What is interesting also is that it has a server part and a desktop part, which I found very important. If you want to automate things, the same what Esri has done, if you want to publish services, you should be able to do that from your desktop very easily. It shouldn't become a developer's task again. FME had the same concept on that. And they're also extremely strong, connected to many different formats. So we did some examples on that. Well, first, to show you, in our infrastructure, would fit completely. When there is overlap here, it means that there is integration. So it would fit perfectly in our environments. So we did some project tests. One example was we had Natura 2000 data coming in on every 4 months, 5 months, and the problems we had is that they demanded from us that we give access databases on a regular basis for experts in the commission that are used to access. They are not interested in any other format because that's what they are used to. And so we first scripted that a year ago, which took us 24 working days, and we still didn't have a real automated process. There were some issues still with it. And we had to combine Python script with some MS Access scripting, and so it was never really working well. In FME, we did that in 4 working days, and we went way further with this. So it's a huge difference. And if you look at the design of it, it looks simple. It's a reader, writer, you define the fields, and you go. So we learned that it was only for this already, it's worthwhile to look into that. We had another case where we had a demand of making, on any map viewer we have, and you have to know we have about 2,000 of them, web maps, so it is crazy. Yeah? So you cannot think like, okay, I'm making a specific one for that project, and then next year I make a specific one for the other project. It would cost way too much money. So I had to find a way of doing it generically. So making that by Python script or a geoprocessing tool or whatever, it would take you quite some time to do that. So what we built here is a service that can harvest data from feature services based on how layers are being defined in here. So we are using the standard, in our case, ArcGIS Online, where the user can play and filter and set what he wants to see and what he wants to download. The moment he presses the download button, he gets this pop-up, and we send that whole information to an FME process, which looks like this. Very easily described, very easily understood. And again, we extended that already twice, which normally would be very heavy to do. Now it was a couple of days of work. So we really believe this is a very good integration tool for us to actually move on and continue in that arena. What we also learned is that customization is very important. We had that a lot already done in ArcGIS tools, for example, where we make toolboxes for specific use. So we tested that as well here. Does that work here as well? Can we make it so that a non-developer can also do his steps? If he is a GIS operator or a data operator, could we make it so that the tools become for him very easily to work on? As I said before, we are only with 2 developers in the whole team. We cannot put everything on those people. We need to find a way to spread it. And so we tested it as well. And we learned that it is quite dynamic for doing so. So this is my message. And if you're interested, I can show you more of those things if you like to. This is my story about a change in our whole infrastructure, thinking of why, how can we make, with the resources we have, a change, because we're ending up with an expansion of data demands So every year, or let's say in the last 10 years, we have tripled the data flow demand in EA. So we needed to find ways of simplifying and make it more cost-effective resources. So, any questions? I'm sorry, maybe I go very fast.
Yeah, I'm from Safe. We met a couple of years ago, I guess. Yeah. I was curious, are you bringing in any inspired data in those workflows that you showed at the moment, or?
Yeah, well, you could, but right now we have, our problem is we don't receive so much inspired data yet. And we have initiated a couple of them ourselves on CDDA. The tool has them embedded, so FME has them standardly in there, and you can easily tweak it towards your needs. And so we have done those tests, and that works very well. So you can bring them in. They become just data formats like any other.
Yeah, thank you for this very interesting presentation. My question is on the reusability, because I've seen many projects in the organization where I work, but also outside, that there are always requests for crop and download data from a website. So what you have there, that download functionality, basically is exactly doing that. You get what you see. Is this tool shareable? Can you share this with another organization that has the same
Yes,
standard?
we could share it as a package that you can publish it yourself. In principle, it's like a geoprocessing service. So in principle, anybody could access it as well if we allow it to.
So you don't need to redevelop it.
But I'm not sure whether we are ready for that, because there is a difference between serving something for your own organization and then easily make it tweakable and change it depending on your needs, than serving it for everyone. So you have to see it, but everything what we do, you can have it. I mean, it's open and it's free, and indeed, if, you can ask for it if you want to. I also would like an email list actually from all the agencies. That would be nice to communicate. We have to think about how we do that, but I will do that offline, where we maybe make kind of social media communication between us, so we can help each other on questions like that. Because there's lots of things going on in every organization. It might be useful to say, hey, we're thinking of doing this. Do you have anything?
It works like a defining the parameters.
Yeah,
Adjusting that.
it can read any map service, any WFS service, and it's out there right now.
So maybe we can share a little bit some requirements, because I work for the EMSA, which is the European Maritime Safety Agency.
Yeah.
And more or less we are facing the same issue.
Yeah.
So we have issue related to a procurement for a solution. It takes huge amount of time, and we have to specify a bunch of requirements that the contractors sometimes have a very difficult understanding. We have also internal difficult understanding with the users, so with the community that we have to serve. So it takes time. There is a legal process that is an overhead. So it's a very nightmare to procure something. But it's even more worse to maintain it, because if we have requested something implemented from scratch, then it's about fixing issue that we never had. If we ask something that is a kind of commercial product, then to issue a request for change, it's another nightmare. So this is a big issue also in the mountain. And finally, it's an issue of integration, as you say, because in EMSA we are having different pillars. Now the big challenge is to create a kind of interoperable system where we can integrate easily different sources and create added value. This is another challenge. So I fully support the idea to have a kind of inter-agency interoperability, I don't know, working group, and try to maybe also to find out a way how to share some procurement, some thought about it.
Okay.
But I would say, in my opinion, what we have to think in terms of this kind of sharing activity is what in Inspire is called spatial data services. For me, the big issue for my organization, the big issue is to try to clarify, to technological vendors and user that there are some commonality on the service that we are going to procure. I'm thinking about, I don't know, a situational awareness service where we have to feed in a user interface some data according to some volume, rate, velocity, and the layer are going to be more or less, we can specify this kind of, the rate of this information and the rendering of this information in a more standard way. And I'm pretty sure that what is interesting for a maritime organization is more or less with maybe different value, with different parameter interest for other organizations. So if we reach a goal to have a kind of common understanding of common specification, and we can cluster a little bit special data services, I think technological vendor can think about solution, and maybe we can incorporate in the solution that they are providing to us some of the functionality that we have to request, and we reduce tremendously the need to specify a bunch of requirements in our tender procurement that nobody understands.
Yeah, partly that's what Inspire is doing, right? So
For the network services, but not for the special data services, where I'm mostly interested, because I don't, okay, that there is a discovery service, that there is a view service, it's fine, but on top of that, we have to create, we have to address use cases. And the infrastructure is established, fine, it works, I don't care. But now what we have to do is to provide solution to the end user, and it's called special data services. And for that, definitely it's not clear.
But for dissemination of data, I mean, as EA, we have been doing this for many years, and we can definitely give input there, what our experiences are, how it works. You have to also disconnect the, let's say, end-user application and services that are meant for dissemination of data. They're very different things. But yeah, we could have a discussion on that. So I think that's where this kind of workshop would really work out, where we tell each other, and we need a communication platform where we express those things, that we can list them and then find who is actually good in this and who can give us some knowledge about it, and then have workshops about it. That would be the way of going.
And involve technological providers.
Yes.
Very open. I mean, I think would be very interesting.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I think.
I should mention, we had our FME user conference last week in Vancouver, and we actually brought together some national mapping agencies at a table just to discuss their experiences. That was specifically FME, but clearly there was a desire to share some of the challenges that each were facing, and this was, just FME specific, and I know you're talking at a level in that, but it was quite interesting because a lot of them hadn't really exchanged that kind of information before, and we should pass maybe their contact to you, because it makes sense to have a forum for discussion, and we're happy to participate anyway.
So I think, shall we go to the next presentation? So this is Hugo Pullman from Geo.
So perhaps if we continue, can we just make perhaps around the table so that
that
who is everybody and where we are from?
Yeah, we have plenty of time, Jan.
Seb, you start.
Yeah, I was saying we have plenty of time, so we can take it really relaxed, because we are supposed to have one presentation, and after the coffee break at 3:30.
Yeah, okay.
I will start to introduce myself. So I'm Sébastien Petit. I will make a presentation when I will reintroduce myself. I'm working in Jan's group, so in EA, and I'm a GIS manager, and I'm more specialized on web services and even on ArcGIS Server and ArcGIS Online.
Maybe can you start?
Okay. Gianluca Luraschi, I work for the EMSA, the European Maritime Safety. I'm a geospatial architect.
I'm from Belgium. I'm working for Callisto, called General Administration of Patrimonial Documentation. And I'm working on the project Inspire specific for GAPD. I'm responsible for more technical aspects.
I'm Joris Gaans. I work for the Flemish government as a policy advisor, geographic information.
Hello, I'm Pedro Mendive from Tracasa Company in Spain.
Yeah.
I think Jan knows the company. I'm working in the regional territorial system, and we are working in the implementation of Inspire issues in our region and also in Spain.
I'm Ken Bragg from Safe Software. We make FME. I'm based in Europe. I'm the European manager for Safe Software. So, yeah.
I'm Günther Peter from Esri International, which is a small group in Europe assisting the accounts and distributors locally.
My name is Andreas Baston. I'm from Atkins. I've been working for EEA for a long time. I've been working for Google and DG Radio, and now I'm working for the Commission.
Przemek Sowiński from INEA, Innovation and Networks Executive Agency, former Center. GIS officer dealing with creation and managing the GIS data.
My name is Alex Lesic. I'm coming from Slovenian Ministry of Agriculture and Environment. Before that I was working 10 years in Environment Agency in Slovenia, and I now work on the one project with implementation of the UN Wastewater Treatment Directive.
I'm Finland from the Danish Environmental Protection Agency under the Ministry of Environment in Denmark. I'm one of the guys who is responsible for the Inspire implementation in our ministry.
Hello, my name is Alexander Fuchs. I work for Frontex, the European Agency for the Coordination of programs of member states. I work as a project manager. I have not the big GIS background, I have more operational background, but I think this purpose of this workshop is a good idea.
Hi, my name is Jesper Schmidt. I work for Atkins. I'm a software developer in GIS department for GIS.
Yeah, I'm Rolf. I'm the third of Jan's group, and I'm mostly on the design side and on the development of more the output of the GIS information you get, and this is working with Esri.
My name is Lorenzo De Simone, and I work for the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, which is an expert in spatial analysis and development. And currently my task is project manager for EMA project at
I forgot to mention that SIF is also a new project within the Commission, and I think it's very important because they're moving towards, let's say, data gathering based on geospatial feature services, let's say web services oriented, which is very interesting, but at the same time puts a lot of extra pressure on the whole system, which is really very file based. And that is also one of the reasons why we had to really revisit this whole thing. I'll let you go do this presentation.
So my role in DG Regional and Urban Policy is to lead and to stimulate the small team of GI and statistics, regional statistics oriented people. And we are part of the analysis unit. We are very closely involved in the conception of regional policy and its implementation. And so what we do is to provide by means of spatial data and analysis, technical expertise, and the technical input, the spatial input into the conception of the policy. And so what I proposed here as an input in this meeting is to briefly talk you about the way how we used recently geo-referencing of major projects in order to enhance the information about the regional dimension of cohesion policy. Just a few words of the context of this project when, well, you might probably know that cohesion policy works within the framework of programming, multi-annual programming periods, and in the period 2007-13, both the Regional Development Fund and Cohesion Fund programs together covered total EU allocation of about 263 billions of euros. So we're talking about quite a lot of money there. But surprisingly enough, even if we're talking about a regional policy, more than half of this amount is being programmed into multi-regional programs. So if we want to know something about the implementation of the programs by region, and then preferably by NUTS region, by NUTS 2 region, we've got a problem because of the architecture of these programs. This can be just for the sake of the national administrative political requirements. In countries without a strong regional authority or regional dimension, you may actually find that most of the programs are implemented at national level, and then you've got one sectoral program for transport, for example, another for environment, and so on. But there's another feature of cohesion policy, the so-called major projects, and these are projects which represent each a cost of at least 50 millions of euros, which means that if such a project sees the light, there's a special procedure for its adoption, there's a specific Commission decision, and we know more about these projects. And so the idea was to use this thematic information in the project decisions and the project files in order to enhance the geographical dimension of the information. And interesting enough, a lot of these major projects are located inside one of these multi-regional programs, because otherwise the added value to regionalize would be more or less absent. So there we've got a potential of almost 60 billion of euros, of which we don't know where it happens in the regions, but the major projects should help us to find this. Well, 50 billion in multi-regional programs. So this is roughly by country the spread, the distinction between the amounts, the allocations spent into regional programs, into multi-regional programs. So especially in countries like Poland, in Romania, in Slovakia, Czech Republic, also Hungary, the program-related information barely informs you about the location of the expenditure on the territory of the country. Now, if we add the information about the major projects, then we can localize also the expenditure shown in yellow here, and so improve substantially the information about the regional dimension of the expenditure. So that was the task. We are talking about all the major projects of that programming period, all those co-financed by the ERDF or by Cohesion Fund. There are still some projects being approved, because there's still some in the pipeline, so this is still evolved, it still evolves a bit, this project. And the aim was simply to represent the projects by points, lines of polygons, according to what is most appropriate for that particular kind of project. And the overall aim, the overall purpose of use, to have an information which was at least appropriate for mapping purposes, but also for analytical purposes, at least at European level. So we're not talking about very detailed local or sub-local information necessarily, you will see why, but at least for broader analytical purposes it should be fine. Now, the input data was simply a list of all these projects with their title. This is essential, but not enough. But then we've got a complete workflow system in our DG with loads of supporting documents, application forms, approving decisions, information sheets for the commissioner. These were very interesting because concise, written for laymen, and often we could find there the information we needed. What was 100% absent from these files were any geodata. Why? Because before the programming period started and when the data flow was set up how member states should apply for major projects, nobody ever thought of asking them for geodata. And if you don't ask them, you will not have them. So there was no legal requirement, no administrative requirement, nothing. And so now we are at the end of this period. Now this initiative has been taken ex post to go for this geo-referencing out of basically nothing. Nothing in terms of geo input data. So our aim was to rely as much as possible on pre-existing data sets. We could call them reference data sets, despite the fact that at the level of commission services this concept is not yet really implemented. Koji has taken the initiative to make an inventory and to go towards reference data sets, but still when we're talking about local administrative units, then it's clear that the Euro-Geographics Euro-boundary map is de facto the reference data set, equally NUTS regions from Eurostat, transport networks from DG Move, and for example the location of wastewater treatment plants from DGA. In some cases we needed auxiliary data sources like TomTom, road networks, or some OpenStreetMap features. And also we used some background imagery context maps from Google Maps or similar, just to check some findings. So in all, we've geo-referenced more than 600 projects. These are mostly, well, virtually every approved project. The level of detail varies a bit according to the project descriptions. When the ideal case, for example, is the refurbishment or the improvement of an urban wastewater treatment plant, and we find precisely the necessary point in the EEA datasets, then we took over this point, we kept its identifier, and that's it. Same goes for projects clearly located and covering the whole territory of a municipality, like, for example, the improvement of a water distribution network. The aim was not to map all the pipes underground, but just to represent the municipality. Sometimes it can also cover complete regions. Then, as one of the aims was to be able to exploit this data at NUTS regional level, it is interesting to see that by geo-referencing the projects, 72% of them are located inside a single NUTS 3 region per project. So there, the job of aggregating the data preparation in order to aggregate the data by NUTS region was virtually already done. If we want to focus on NUTS 2 regions, then this percentage grows to 89%. For the remaining part, the minority, there we needed to apply a distribution key, for example, to distribute the total allocation spent dedicated to a particular project by NUTS region. And this was simply done on the basis of the number of features or the length of the features in the absence of any other information. So this, for the policymakers and the policy implementation, this leads to the production of aggregated indicators at the level of NUTS regions by subdividing the project allocations and then summing them again by NUTS region. and these can then be easily compared to other context indicators. And now, in these slides, I haven't compared this to the original regionalization estimates of the program-related data, but if you would do so, then you would see that there's, especially in the Eastern European countries, there's a substantial improvement of the level of regionalization of these data by using the major projects. This can be displayed by any other dimension available in the underlying data, by fund or by theme also. There's quite a detailed distinction, a classification by theme of expenditure of these projects. So when you're interested in exclusively rail projects or wastewater treatment projects, then this is really becoming an interesting data source. And also overall, aid intensity maps now start to show a regional diversity, even in countries where the programming is essentially done at national level. Then from the first moment we thought this was really the kind of data set which is very poorly presented in static maps. So we tried to convince the unit dealing with the major projects that the appropriate way to go was to present them in map surfaces. So we have created a few surfaces, one with all the projects, and then also the in broad thematic groups. For the time being, well, this is a relatively recent project. For the time being, these surfaces, they are just hosted for intranet, internal commission purposes. But we're working together with the AEA for a public hosting, and later on, probably, well, the aim is also to open up our digit data center infrastructure in order to make these services visible to the outside world. And then we still need to convince our InfoRegio webmasters about the added value of actually just hosting and showing these services to the broad public, which is an additional challenge. Okay, for the time being, what can you find in terms of geodata for those able to access Commission SDE databases? We've stored the relevant feature classes in our ArcSD. For the others, you find the same content as shapefiles for download from CRKBC, and this is just a public space where anybody can download this. So as said, there are still projects being approved, so these data will be gradually enhanced, well, let's say every 3 months probably, when new projects see the light. And then another next step, well, I've already mentioned to do first the next steps, but then what is even more important is that for the next programming period now that has just started, and where no projects have seen the light yet, because the first step is to approve the programs, and then only afterwards the projects can be submitted. What is new there is that the application form towards the member states now asks for geodata on the localization of the projects. But there was no political willingness to be very demanding in this. So the requirements are very flexible, so I expect that we will find ourselves with lots of bits and pieces and loose strings and shapefiles without projection information, and these are in exotic formats, and then we'll, depending on the kind of the volume of the data and the diversity of the data, we'll need to see how to handle it, and probably we will benefit from your experience, and we will certainly keep in touch on this issue. in the same way, we have also found out that INEA has worked in a quite similar way on project location, 10 key project locations. As I mentioned, we are as compatible as can be with the urban wastewater treatment data. And so, well, the aim is definitely to be as complementary as possible now and in the future with any other thematic project-related data sets you may have. Yeah, these links will not be very useful for you for the time being. I have, before coming to this workshop, I hesitated a bit on which theme to present, because, well, we've got a few other projects up and running as well. Perhaps just briefly mention them. With GRC, we are working on working with a team developing the global human settlement layer, which is basically will be a layer of very detailed raster building probabilities. Think of 10-meter resolution, 10-meter resolution pixel. You will have the probability that there's a building. So this is intended as a kind of a more specialized, think of it as a kind of a variant of the soil ceiling, but focused on buildings. So what they try to do is to avoid as much as possible the soil, the sealed, non-built up areas. And so the idea is that this, amongst other purposes, this layer will help to improve the population disaggregation for 2011 in those countries, the minority of countries, where there will no bottom-up population counts available at grade level. Then the Urban Atlas 2012 Copernicus project is currently ongoing. It's now in the second year of the contract. Dozens of urban areas have already been mapped, and so gradually we will also go through the exercise of estimating population counts for these inhabited polygons. So polygon there is basically a building block, which is definitely enhancing also the analytical use cases of the Urban Atlas project. We have outsourced last year the development of the time series of Lao2 population data for every decade from 61, so 61, 71, 81. We've got now a comprehensive data set with sometimes it are estimates, in other cases it are just census data. This is available as well. I can send you the link if you're interested. And yeah, this for people who need to do something on the historical evolution of local population, cities, and so on. This can be very interesting. And then since when? 2012, we have developed quite a lot of interest in trying to enhance indicators on accessibility and availability of urban public transport, local urban public transport, but also rail transport, by looking as much as possible into available open data, trying to make sense of the emerging standards for timetable data like the GTFS, the General Transit Feed specification promoted by Google. And so this has now led to a set of indicators on the frequency of departures by stop and in its relationship to urban propagation. We are drafting Regional Focus, a short article on this. Hopefully this will be published somewhere in autumn. But in any case, we will come back on this. And we are now also trying to take this further to the production of indicators of the speed of the services in urban areas. So as soon as we've got a bit of results on this, you may be sure that you will hear more about this. And the same kind of data will also lead us to kind of assess the quality in terms of frequency and speed of rail services between cities.
I'm always
That's it.
impressed on how much things you guys are doing. How big is your group actually?
It's always non-existent. Commission officials, we have 3 for the time being, but with a focus, well, 2 people have more focus on regional statistics than on GI, and then I've got more or less 2 external consultants. But part of what you see here, what in recent years we try to make the most out of cooperation with other organizations, with OECD, with JRC, with you, and trying to avoid as much as possible overlaps in work, to be complementary, to focus on experimental stuff, and then once it gets up and running, like this public transport stuff, we will not be able to do this for years. Because it's really messing around with detailed data sets. Once we've got this in a bit of streamlined workflow, then we will see, is there an interest to operational, to make this on a more permanent basis? And if yes, who does it and how? And maybe something for ESPON perhaps, or something like this. But if you ask from out of the blue to an ESPON team to start developing something like this, the chances, the risk that you get something which is not interesting is just too high. So then it's better that you try to experiment a bit more.
Any questions?
I have 2 questions in one. The projects that you have been georeferencing, you mentioned 600 projects. Do you refer to specific category of projects?
These are all the major projects. All the major projects that have been approved during that programming period. There are 650, something like this. This is
for any
complete
project?
population of projects.
So, for example,
all the African Cohesion Fund projects.
So, imagine you mentioned before Tanter, INEA. If they have a project for they're financing the project for a railway.
These are the TEN-T,
yes,
the
yes,
TEN-T projects. That's another branch.
So it doesn't. It's not part of that.
The aim is not to finance from 2 EU sources the same stretch of motorway. If you
that's the general idea.
I was just wondering if in that effort one could look at that map to see all the projects funded by the European Commission and tied in. That was the question.
The limit is, these are all the major projects co-financed by the European Regional Development Fund, ERDF, or by Cohesion Fund. So it's constrained by the cohesion policy market. That's it. But it's complementary with what INEA does.
Maybe one day you will have layers of, also all the projects of the different.
Well, at this stage, if you combine the geodata INEA has developed and ours, you start to have a quite good overview of what is happening in the field of transport, for example.
My second question was regarding the population data. I understand from the slides that you're working on some modeling of the data within the urban areas for 2011. Working for the European Center for Disease Control, I'm trying to analyze disease incidents that unfortunately we have at aggregated level. So sometimes we have up to NUTS 3. This is our best expectation. But it happens that with time we try to do some modeling, but we cannot work with aggregated features. So we try to disaggregate in relation to the risk of finding that disease into the human population. So we want to know where the people are basically. And it's very difficult to have this data for all Europe. But we found some proxy to this using the population gridded statistics of 2006. It's distributed by Eurostat. It's a raster for all Europe.
Geostat 2006
exactly.
data.
One square kilometer. I was wondering what is your opinion that if you used it and if you would recommend it for analysis, or there are kind of limitations?
At European-wide, for European-wide purposes, this is the data set we use as well. Because the advantage is that there for those countries where there are what we call bottom-up data, so basically point-based, address-based, registered population data aggregated to 1 square kilometer cells, that there you've got the most reliable population count you can have. Unfortunately, only a minority of countries has been able and willing to provide these data in the 2006 data set. So for the other countries, it's mostly disaggregation modeling done by the Austrian Institute for Technology in this case, or some what we call hybrid methods then done by national statistical institutes, where it's a mixture of bottom-up and top-down methods. Now, so this is for 2006 at 1 square kilometer resolution, the best you can find in Europe. That's for sure. What we've done in combination with that data set, but also sometimes with higher resolution grid data, which can be available in particular countries, or census tract data, like in the Netherlands, they've got wijken and buurten, small urban areas, and they are freely available with population counts and so on, is to combine the most detailed population distribution we could find with the Urban Atlas 2006 polygons. So the disadvantage is that Urban Atlas 2006 only covers 305 urban agglomerations, and it's not at all covering the whole territory. Nevertheless, in the major agglomerations, this gives you a modeled but quite reliable distribution of population inside the urban areas. Now, the aim is, in both the population grid, the Urban Atlas, this population modeling is expected to improve substantially for 2011, because it's a census year. The 2011 population grid has been, in a first version, being released by Eurostat last week. You can download it. It's not definitive, but there are more countries than before which have bottom-up data in there, because they send their census guys in the field with GPS or any other method of geolocating the census records. And so this is an ideal moment to have more point-based data. And well, our aim is, together with GRC, to improve the remaining points as well. So the aim is, well, to have an improved, enhanced version of this 2011 grid somewhere in the middle of next year, let's say. And also then, again, to use this kind of information in combination with Urban Atlas.
Thank you.
And as then the challenge on population distribution becomes a bit less urgent because the data are improving, we are now looking to find more data on the detailed distribution of workplace-based employment. Is it perhaps less interesting for the spread of diseases, or perhaps it's interesting for the spread of diseases at the workplace? But absenteeism, you never know. Well, this is so other variables on great and sublocal basis, this becomes now a new challenge.
Very interesting and promising. The applications, especially for health, they're very much interested in where the people live.
Yeah.
And then the second step, how is the age distribution, male and sex. But
yeah,
by knowing that, you know if there is a spread of some, I don't know, legionnaire disease, for example, which is spread by cooling tower, then you know where is the people, where it's distributed, you can identify the potential. So we're working on a pilot on that.
yeah.
So we started using just a portion of that grid, that data set. And the issue is that the spread of the legionnaire disease varies with the height of the building, the height of the cooling tower, and the speed, the wind speed, the direction. So if you start having the resolution of the population data, which is the population at risk, basically, if it's not detailed enough to compete with those variables, those determinants, then it's very complicated. But I understand that there are, as you said, data set for municipalities, for some cities, let's say urban areas, that are really allow you for that. And that could be a good use case for example.
Some countries publish also their census data at census tract level now, very small portions. If you look at, I can send you links if you want. Italy, Spain, Portugal, it's UK, it's amazing. It's really at building block. We've got millions of polygons with population counts, sometimes with age distribution and so on. So now it's a good opportunity to try.
Shapefile is great.
Shapefiles and accompanying population counts.
Any other questions?
Short, I think. Yeah. I was looking with Esri's map for office, and there you can make a very easy geographical coding. Because when you have the ISO coding or address or so, but the problem is always for us, then when we only got regional data, or when we have data only from Flanders or data only from Catalonia or so, then there is no really easy coding. And then I have to click the whole thing on the whole country, or I just have to take it off. Do you have some?
But I think that is because you're using ArcGIS Online, and I think there we don't have European data sets as reference data.
No, so we have.
That is something I've already discussed, I think, with Esri, that I would like that some of the Eurostat data that we could put in there so we can use those tools to do the reference.
Yeah, no, it's actually only that when you have an Excel sheet and you have, for example, Belgium, EG, or you have Denmark, then it automatically makes puts it on the map. Or you have a real address and you make the point data. But if there's only somebody since London, then it's lost, or you have to put it on Belgium.
You can do it by giving this kind of data sets in it. Thank you.
Comments to what Camilo just said, and also to your initial presentation that the agency now we deal with exactly what Digital Asia deals with in terms of collecting the data. We get a lot of information from the member states and the applicants with their proposals for projects, and this is all kinds of data you imagine. You name it, we get it. Shape files, geodatabases, Excel sheets.
We all face the same problem.
Doodles on scans, printouts, but from Google Maps. Yes, so in this context, I immediately thought about coming back to you and to Rob. Sorry, Ken about this tool for automating such processes, because maybe somehow we can facilitate it. Because until now, within one call for proposals, you would get, let's say, 250 proposals tops. Okay, yeah, we can do it. 2 guys working full time, 1 week, 2 weeks, yeah, we can do it. But it now has been extended. Now we're gonna get 2,000 proposals for energy call this year. I don't think we can make it.
No, so, I think it's also so that we cannot centralize this. I mean, data flows, you always have the data flows for certain purposes, and you will collect data in a certain way. So I don't believe that we cannot centralize this. What I also know is that even if we are, and this I believe with the new way we are going, we can probably take 5 or 6 times more than we do today. But there is a limit.
Of course.
We will end up with a limit, definitely. We also, in the EA, have a lot of discussion, because if you ask data towards countries, you have the right, or you have a way of, in the beginning, defining exactly what you want and what to deliver, except when it's very voluntary. So there is, but that's very important that our system for reporting came in, because there we are defining, okay, you have to deliver as a shapefile, and this can only be an ID in there and a polygon, because we know that multilinguality might become a problem in the shapefile. I mean, so we have some rules that we need to set up if you do it a data delivered way. But this whole construction changes entirely when you talk about web and feature services. There, it has to be already structured in some way. Maybe the field name is different, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, this you can map. But there is, I mean, the vision and the view is very different than dealing with data sets as such and how you deliver things. But also demands from countries to have a certain infrastructure set up, knowing that cloud computing and cloud services becoming very, very rapidly in place, and you as an institution don't need anymore to be the one serving it out. So it becomes saving a shapefile in the cloud almost. Yeah, that is what is feature services becoming or happening now. And so that will make big differences in the following years about how we're handling data. So hopefully we get less Excel and less structures like that and more this kind of things, but we don't know. But I believe that we need tools that are easily manipulatable with people that aren't necessarily developers. That's my goal. If I can find that, and that's where for me it helped me solving one part of that puzzle, because it's still a collection of tools that you need. Yeah? We need our map, we need our server, so there's a set of things, and you have to find a set of tools that work with you, with the group of people that you're dealing with. So the knowledge of persons is very important to the constellation of your systems that you're going to take in. So in some cases it might be open source oriented, in other cases it might be a combination, and in other cases it might be one tool, because you only have a person to deal with it, and how much can he learn, or how many systems can he learn. So it's not straightforward, I would say. It's for every organization slightly different, and you have to find out what is it actually that fits in your situation.
If I just know, yes, and then we are not dreaming of having everything automatically done in terms of the collection or transformation of data, but anything that takes some of this workload from us, from the really laborious process of copying and pasting sometimes, or doing whatever to make it work. This is already good news for us. And also reply to you about, yes, for example, sharing or showing data together with DigiRegio. I mean, it sounds like a good idea to me. The reason why we do similar things separately is because DigiRegio and now co-finance projects or manage projects, co-finance from different sources. This is one program, this is another, this is one funding source, we have another. And that's why we do it separately. Still, there are overlaps, and it would be nice maybe one day to actually show what we do in similar domains like transport, for example, both DigiRegio and now. That's so that the member states know what's going on without having to go to two different places to find out what's happening in the domain of transport or energy.
Yeah, but I'm sure they will be both in line with the EU policies for the development of the network, major accidents and so on.
In the end, the citizen, he doesn't mind if this railway has been co-financed by TNT or by a Cohesion fund, as long as the railway is there.
But I have a question regarding the tough job of importing all this data that comes in any format and so on. Do you think it would be helpful if at the application level, where the companies apply for funds, when they have to propose, then you oblige them to say, okay, you got to send me a CAD or a shapefile, or please send me a geodatabase, and use this projection. Could you do that at that level so that they won't apply? Then they need, because anyway you're going to ask them the data later, right?
I'm smiling because I already answered for you because we didn't really try that. But the thing is that we actually, for the first time ever last year, the GIS team participated in compiling the guide for applicants, which is the document which the applicants then follow to help them correctly file an application. And we prepared a very brief, and I'm talking 1/6 of an A4 text guide of what it is that we would like very much to have supplied to us as a geographical reference for a proposal. And it was, we gave them different options. Okay, send us a paper map at reference, paper map at a given level of detail. Send us a shape file in the ETRS 89 reference system. Send us a number of points with coordinates presented like this, and so on and so forth. Okay? Great idea. A great initiative on behalf of the GIS team. It was all spoiled by an administrative decision which concluded that obliging the applicants to sending actual geographical information could be discriminatory in some way. And they inserted one word. They inserted one word into our text. Ideally.
Yeah.
So ideally, you send us a GIS data. So of course, ideally, you send us a GIS data.
So they sent it to you as an idea.
We still get what we've been getting, but actually, I mean, it improves with the increasing availability of the open source or freeware.
But I wonder, should a company that is applying and eventually getting 10 million euros, shouldn't be able to make to send a shapefile?
I fully agree with you. And yes, and after all, they apply for millions of euros. They want co-funding of their ideas, their projects, their works. So eventually, they want money.
What if you give them the tool, like a sketch, like just draw a line?
We are working on it. We are working
Make
on
an
a
online
web-based service, which will allow them to actually point by point add data. Just draw a project, draw the alignment of the proposals that you're going to send, just to make it easier, to make it so easy that maybe our colleagues from the legal team wouldn't have to say that no, it's potentially discriminatory. So no, ideally you click on the website and but yes, I agree with you.
But we face also things like that once in a while. So it took us quite some years to get rid of all this kind of discussions. Any other? And maybe I can help you getting the right contact in our agency. Maybe they can give you some stuff that we do that might help you. I don't know if did the paper go around to
I hope everybody puts this.
No.
I do not.
Okay.
I don't know if it went to the back.
Okay. More questions? Yes. I think that we can have a coffee break.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm working with Cohesion. Yes. In the evening. No. Say hello from Sebastian. In Gazi, the university. Remember. So you are the one responsible of fire?
We need to follow up on
Interesting.
Don't worry.
Non, moi je viens de...
I made a mistake in my
Ah, ok, mais je crois que tu étais...
program that I compiled.
Don't worry, don't worry.
Je crois que tu étais...
J'ai un comprendre votre parler en anglais.
Non, mais c'est l'habitude. Yann, qui est mon collègue, très clairement, mais on parle vraiment tout le temps, etc. Donc on a essayé de tout le temps parler anglais.
En fait, lui, il est responsable du projet qui est un projet au niveau plutôt fédéral.
On a travaillé chez les Linux en 2000. Ça a commencé au Canada.
En fait, non, il a commencé avec 4 mois.
Tu vas en avoir une.
Non, j'ai 32 ans. Je suis un peu plus jeune. Mais non, en fait, il a commencé avec 4 mois. Qui est un projet qui a maintenant, on est à l'Italie. Enfin, moi, je ne suis plus dedans parce qu'il faut une quelqu'un qui est un très espagnol. Mais c'est-à-dire qu'idéalement, on aurait dû faire un projet commun, quelque chose qui soit commun avec la GIS.
Chez nous,
oui, mais il y avait peut-être moyen d'essayer au moins.
Ouais.
Essayer de rebondir sur ce qui était fait. En fait, il n'est pas du tout dans... Enfin, si, mais jamais d'ailleurs quand il fait des applications. Il a fait des essais. Tous les replaces ne sont pas complètement...
I think as me, it's very, I'm glad to see that you joined us. We were even asked for French.
Yes, j'ai appris si on n'a pas la bonne version des CME par rapport à le premier qui est par rapport à la version d'un GIS, ça ne fonctionne pas. Il faut se mettre à jour. Il peut se jeter pas que aussi une version qui va s'adapter au FMS qu'on possède. Et donc on s'est demandé si c'est pas un GIS meilleur qui est même un GIS.
Right now, not yet, but maybe. They just give us their framework for the making the data view based on JavaScript. This is for me starting point to make some visualization of the data. Also, images you work also the SE product, but nowadays with some interference with some other product. But now we are just, but it wasn't like this kind of JavaScript. So this is we used like iframe into the web page or something like that.
Agriculture and forestry. And environment.
But I don't know for how long. Maybe this ministry will be now elections and who knows what's happening. Will be agriculture or environment together or they separate? Who knows?
So, was there a certain, let's say, constraint?
Siamo incontrati qualche settimana fa adesso.
What was the bottleneck?
The bottleneck is this that you have this enriching of your data, a new option, where you can ask for population data. And I see this politically, I need to get those stuff. And I don't mind to pay a bit of a price to actually make that thing happen.
What did you say?
Okay, so what you actually do is geo-enrichment by yourself.
Yes. Geo-enrichment, dump it in there.
Yeah,
so if my sub-organization goes and uses enrich population,
okay,
we as an organization should be able to say, when you ask for population,
It's actually it's the same problem that because it want to show what is going on. Also want to show that
Vabbè, in maniera italiana.
put data schools, men, and then you put it directly
because you have to
Io vengo dalla parte est e poi lo dalla Sassonia non è lontano dalla Polonia, dalla Polonia
it's not nuts data. What is this population? As he has most data sets. But why don't you use the data? They cannot look it up. They can also of course, no, they will be automatically. But what I want is that people that are not GIS can enrich their data using as a manager.
Sì, è stato
When I ask the population, then it is the right population.
perché noi siamo
So you basically control your references from
we are doing this.
That's what you guys do.
Forever
we are doing this. We're responding with the nuts and then we're doing
Uno,
this is the reason why we're using nuts. If we didn't,
io sono responsabile della
then we wouldn't use nuts at all. No, but the entry
abbiamo presentato i colleghi che non ci va bene.
Where if it's in there.
La demostrazione praticamente l'unica più sulle spalle questo site da tutti i servizi che
And I have already, they have services, looking for your service and also very easy
adesso non
I mean, I've seen the geocoding service used in so many different jurisdictions, like Port of London, they use all the assets, the barcode response, this morning talked to Amazon, I think the same kind of issue, like, it would be nice, you know, have this set of cells, each cell would have these criteria for this other, it's mine. When I say,
it should be hooked up to the organization. You can say, my organization, there you should have a configuration setting where you can do that.
Think about
Quindi quando lo Stato membro ti chiede un report, tu have to
no, so that you can, I can hook up to that.
C'est la facture, c'est montée à 40 000 €.
I want you here.
I want me here. Yes.
This is Thomas. He's working for the catastrophe in Belgium.
Yes.
And so with our friends of your friends, yes. Not my friend anymore, my past colleague. ArcGIS for Inspire. What is the difference with the? What is the same Inspire? Because I say we are using ArcGIS for Inspire from Roberto, which is free.
Can't be doing free? Because we paid about 40,000.
Can we do one thing, because I'm not involved in the details, but Nick Land, my colleague, who is taking care of that, and also of your account, he's coming today. Are you here tomorrow as well?
Yes.
Can we please make an appointment at our booth to make sure that we are on the same page, because I do not want to confuse you with something.
That's why I call you, because I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Like, I will use ArcGIS for Inspire, and of course you know we don't care about price because you are lucky, but I know that from what Roberto said, this what we are using from him is for free. His extension, ArcGIS for Inspire, maybe, of course not everything behind, but
it's for free. You have a specific
that's why
contract.
I prefer to ask you.
It works like this in their specific case. They have a so-called enterprise license agreement, which we sign with an organization, and we do basically the following. We look at the historical spending, so what have you spent for software, for maintenance over the years, and then we said, okay, what are you most likely to spend in the next 3 or 4 years, and then we define a fixed price per annum. And for this fixed price per annum, the customer can deploy as much software as he wants. That makes procurement much easier, especially for a government agency. And then when we reach the end of this term, let's say after 3.5 years, we say, what have you actually spent? If they spend less and they want to extend the contract, then of course the price goes down. If they spend more, then the price may go up. I mean, it's a matter of negotiation. This is what we call an enterprise license agreement. And we have one with the European Environment Agency, and when he says, I get it for free, that's because they pay a fixed amount.
But I'm right that the Inspire extension for ArcGIS is open source and
no, it's not open source.
It's not open source?
It's no. There's that GeoPortal server.
GeoPortal is free.
Okay, that's why I'm asking you, because I thought everything was open source.
No, not everything. Okay. Originally, to be very honest, we wanted to make it open source, but it was not possible because for miscellaneous things. things.
Okay,
Mainly it was a licensing problem, because when it's so linked as an extension to ArcGIS Server and ArcGIS Desktop, that
I can understand that. That's why I'm asking you, because I'm confused. Because we don't, no way, we don't really. Of course, we don't install 200 ArcGIS Server, but I mean, we don't have this problem. We just, except for the FME interoperability thing, which is another license, we don't have any problem. So that's why I'm asking and checking, because I remember I told Roberto, he said the Geo-portal is true, it's open source.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so maybe, but because we are working a lot with Roberto on the Inspire extension. I mean, I put my track as a consultant on the business. I don't know if it's this guy, because I didn't meet the guy who is working for me on this. I just work remotely with the guy, so I have a consultant working on Inspire for me with the Esri extension. But I don't know who could sit next to me. I don't know him. I never saw him.
Who was it?
I don't know his name. It's a guy from Trakaza. So it's one of my company, Trakaza. I put him on the project because I don't have the time. So he's just setting up things and doing things for us. But we never met except on Skype, speaking on by phone. So I don't know the guy
from
Trakaza, the Spanish consultant.
Yes, it's right there.
Yeah.
There is one from Trakaza, but I'm not sure if
I will ask him because it could be him.
Yes, that's him. It's for Australia.
Yeah, but because we have like some consultants coming to the office, so we know them, but some of them they work on a project for us, but we never meet them because so it's a bit interesting to work like that.
Thomas, who did you talk to? The Esri? Are you talking with Esri Belux, obviously, with Frederick Walters, I think? No?
Yes, but now we have to buy new magnets. We've got some problems with the new provider, which is SIGGIS. Because they told us we had it's an ASP, Application Service Provider license, which apparently is more expensive.
It depends for what you use it. An application service provider license is something that you provide to someone who wants to make money with the services. So
but we weren't the one who decided which version we had to get. And so we discovered this. The problem is we made a public market, they call this. So we get offers from providers of products. Give us an offer for products. And they gave us an offer just for Inspire. A simple one. And after that, when they received the market, they learned from Esri Belux that we had ASP for Inspire.
ASP stands for Application Service Provision, which means if you use the application to provide services and make money, then you need a special license.
And that's quite a lot because we didn't have such a project so far at the moment, so it's quite expensive. We had this.
We do it like this. What we are, I mean, over the next couple of days, whenever there are plenary sessions or breakout sessions, it doesn't make any difference. In the breaks, we are all trying to be at our booth. So if you want to meet us, the easiest thing is just please come to our booth, and we can set up a specific date and meet off-site or whatever, or over lunch, or just name it, so that we take sufficient time to discuss this. But as I said, as I'm not involved in the details, please let's defer this discussion until tomorrow. So, but we'll address it, no doubt. Oh, I just see here is. Okay, Sebastian is here.
Tomorrow. Just for this installation because I didn't.
Lorenzo. Oh, I thought that I have this version actually of the program.
Because we are moving to there, so it's moving in a good direction.
Okay.
I just wanted. Because I know,
thank you.
I'm not selling anything from Esri. I just I know you are the resource person.
No, I maybe need to just coordinate something behind the scenes and just ask people.
I know it's working with Donc un distributeur.
Ich wollte Wasser holen und der sagt, da war uns so ein Typ, der sagt, nein, ich hole, das war fair, dafür will ich ja bezahlen. Ich dachte mir, damit gleich wirklich.
Ils ont fait supérieur et du coup, oui, c'est plus cher. Et moi, je ne savais pas parce que le problème, c'est que c'est un marché qui avait été passé plusieurs années avant par d'autres collègues. Ils ne sont plus là, depuis. Et donc, nous, on ne savait pas qu'on marché. On n'a pas précisé ça. De l'autre côté, il n'avait pas posé la question non plus.
C'est pour ça que je voulais.
Et le pire, c'est qu'à quel moment on avait projeté de vendre ces données alors qu'on était sur. Et en plus, pour les premiers stades, c'était vraiment absent.
Tu ne pourras jamais donner une valeur avant les 10 prochaines années.
Mais non, je ne sais pas ce qui s'est passé. Qui a décidé de prendre ça? Est-ce qu'on s'est fait avoir un ennemi? Je ne sais pas. Mais
c'est comment sur le distributeur.
Alors là, c'est vraiment. Alors je vois. Et ça n'a encore jamais servi. Hein. Je suis le premier à toucher. Je suis le premier à y toucher et je suis déjà bloqué.
Mais Roberto, le chef de projet.
Oui, mais il était déjà venu chez nous en plus. Il avait déjà fait ça chez nous. Je me souviens. Ouais, mais en fait, c'est vrai qu'il y a tellement de techniques publiques, c'est pas facile d'être. Oui, je trouve que ça va être bien en Internet, parce qu'en fait, il faut bien en faire par cas pour s'assurer qu'ils auront comptabilisé pour nous. Voilà. On a acheté récemment 6 licences Arcapo, maintenant c'est AGS Advanced, et 8 licences Archeditor, service standard. On a 3 OMS.
3 services?
Oui, 3 services.
Je crois qu'on a 500 services, un truc comme ça.
Oui, par contre, c'est assez gros parce qu'en fait, il y a tout le plan parcellaire cadastral. En fait, il y a 2 services qui, normalement, sont compliant.
Ils ne sont pas hyper compliant.
C'est-à-dire que quand on voit le get capabilities, il n'est pas bon. On utilise la sabologie et c'est la bonne projection, il me semble, si je me souviens bien. Mais c'est tout.
Non, nous, on n'a aucun moyen de faire ça hyper
Et en fait, on a tout le plan parcellaire, tout est parcellaire. Comme une million de votes, c'est pas mal à gérer. Bon, l'administratif, ça c'est pour moi. Dans les 600, et alors on a un service qui est 4 GIS, ou alors on fournit tous les objets graphiques du
Le but c'est l'application derrière.
Non, le but c'est pour nous de partager alors déjà les services avec des partenaires.
On peut principalement tous les données européennes de l'environnement.
On a une application d'ailleurs qui s'appelle qui est 4GIS, c'est un viewer en fait qui permet alors de consulter par parcellaire. Et alors il y a aussi on peut consulter le catalogue. En principe on devrait faire les demandes d'extrait, des demandes de données aussi. Qui s'approche déjà un peu de la demande de service, malheureusement quand on est passé en environnement finance, il y a eu un blocage parce qu'en fait ils ont modifié l'application pour s'adapter et ça n'a plus fonctionné à partir de
l'avantage qu'on a chez nous, c'est qu'on s'en fout, c'est des données ouvertes. Enfin non, on a des données secrètes.
This is your Geo-Referencing and it's you, then it's us.
Il y a cette dans les pollutions.
Mais c'est un truc aussi, on a le problème par rapport au reste de l'Europe que la commission de la vie privée est terriblement.
Mais c'est dingue en Belgique parce que j'habite en Suède. En Suède, je vais sur Internet, je peux savoir ce que tous mes voisins possèdent, tout ce qu'ils possèdent, maison, appartement, même voiture. combien ils gagnent, où ils travaillent. Enfin, eux, ils peuvent retrouver souvent parce que je travaille à Copenhague. Je sais tout la vie privée là-bas. Donc, tant que tu n'as rien à te reprocher, tu t'en fous. Mais, donc, ici, là, je peux savoir que mon voisin a un appartement juste à côté de chez moi, mais il a une maison de campagne. En Belgique, tu.
Ah non, mais nous, c'est fou. Rien que juste la partie graphique du plan parcellaire, les identifiants des parcelles, on a un peu galéré pour leur accepter qu'on puisse les... Mais alors, quand il s'agit, ça on a ce problème, de lier les données propriétaires au parlant parcellaire cadastral, alors là c'est tout de suite en rotation, hein. Là on a un blanc et on change de sujet parce que ça, ils ne veulent pas.
C'est dingue,
mais plus, on peut faire le lien parce que c'est assez dingue, on n'a pas ce lien direct entre les deux. Du coup, c'est une galère pour pouvoir à chaque fois avoir ces données, de les relier. Et ils refusent de faire parce que, allez, ça pourra servir si jamais on partage et que des gens pourraient s'en servir pour les relier et ensuite utiliser alors le corps parcellaire pour retrouver des valeurs.
Extremely timely because we were just thinking about
Vous
setting
dire
up
avec
an
ça.
expert
C'est pas faux.
Oui, mais c'est ça, mais le problème c'est qu'il y a une espèce
c'est le truc.
In continuation what you said last year. So that is the
c'est une paranoïa en fait par rapport à la vie privée, il faut absolument pas. Et alors je me demande quelle tête ils ont tiré lorsqu'ils ont vu les premières photos aériennes des Google Maps.
C'est ça que j'allais dire, quand tu vas sur la vie privée, qu'est-ce qu'ils disent? Tu vas sur Facebook, tu vois les ploucs qui postent sur la dernière heure ou la Meuse pour insulter n'importe quoi. Ils postent avec un compte Facebook, il faut savoir tout ce qu'ils ont, combien ils ont d'enfants, comment ils sont à l'école, ce qu'ils ont fait, qui travaillent en moins, tu peux voir la vie privée, les gens, dans un sens ils veulent pas, mais dans l'autre sens c'est tellement con qu'ils donnent tout. Et à la bouche, ça dépend rien d'un côté officiel, mais d'un côté à Google ou à Facebook, ils donnent n'importe quoi.
Ouais, mais moi par exemple, pour Facebook, on peut savoir je suis marié, j'ai des enfants, j'habite sur l'île, mais déjà, c'est là, quoi. Oui, je travaille au Canada.
J'ai des enfants et que je n'habite pas en Belgique. Mais tu crois que j'habite en Jamaïque, je pense, parce que j'ai mis comme renseignement de toute façon.
Mais je partage jamais, par exemple, la localisation. Je vois pas l'intérêt d'aller commencer à dire je suis ici.
Non, mais sur Facebook. Mais en fait, c'est comme tout, il y a des gens ils partagent n'importe quoi. Mais par contre, un truc légal officiel, ils ont peur que je ne sais pas que le grand. L'État et le grand complot. Le grand complot, tu vois. Avec les Illuminati et les francs-maçons et tout.
On récupère les données pour. C'est vrai qu'on peut leur répondre. Écoute, ton compte Facebook, c'est déjà.
De toute façon, on ne vais pas dire, mais quand tu vois comment ça fonctionne l'administration, etc., les données qu'il y a là-bas, personne ne saura jamais. Moi, il doit vraiment viser quelqu'un et trouver. Tu ne te diras jamais chercher, c'est trop difficile.
Non, c'est pas difficile. Mais du coup, on se trouve là.
Good. More people than expected.
Yeah, good.
20.
Let's see if they come back.
Yeah. Because if it's only us, I don't make my presentation. You know what I'm going to say.
Did you put yours on it?
No, you sent it on me. It's crazy. I just treat it on the inspiration that we want to buy on air conditioning for the school, so they should come to it.
You can feel that Denmark is not used to a lot of heat.
I think the city is not used to maybe they will come back. The city is not used to But I fully get 6 presentations, so my presentation is it's better that it's a bit shorter.
I didn't know how long I had to. I aim for 20 minutes. Yeah, I know, but I know I didn't have any clock when I came in. How late I was already because.
But anyway, it's better that it's.
Can you use your phone?
Yeah. To see the time. What do you mean?
You can use your phone in order to get the time.
I know, but I rushed in and I immediately started because
You are too stressed.
I didn't know how.
I'm coming
For the idea, giving you a workshop graduated 3 stages.
Yeah, it was a bit organized. This is working in big organizations. You don't realize. It's the same when I came here to train, yeah. And normally they know handicap, whatever. In like when I go on a plane, they're very well organized. I arrived from the train station. I don't have a reservation. No, I have. Yeah, but this you can't use. You have to call this organization. Well, eventually that put me on.
Wow. How long does it take by train?
4 hours.
4 hours.
From
It's not bad from Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
Yeah. It's not so bad. Because, I mean, normally you have to be 2 hours in advance to the airport.
Exactly.
Then it takes an hour and a half an hour to get out, so it's also 4 hours.
Yeah, it's not a straight line. You have to.
But with the train, it's nice. You're in first class, and you get food and drinks and a nice seat. And you can have internet and connect your.
That's true.
Plug
You also
in.
have internet.
Yeah. So you can do something when you're sitting there.
Here is my presentation. Because you need to put them all on a USB stick if you're going to. I have a few machine.